Welcome along to Pembrey Circuit in Wales for the penultimate event of the 2012 Pickup Truck Racing Championship. Pembrey, a particularly picturesque circuit and a very exciting racetrack, 1.5 miles in length. And we've got all the top guns in the pickup trucks ready to fight it out for the championship, which looks like it's going to go all the way to Brands Hatch. Let's go down and join Fern Webster though in the paddock. We're
here at Pembrey with Steve Dance, who's actually leading the championship at the moment. Steve, you had qualifying last night. You had a great weekend last time at Snetterton. How are you feeling about this weekend? How did qualifying go yesterday?
Yeah, qualifying went very well actually. We were quickest in the first session and third quickest in the second. The track was very slick, especially in the second session. So yeah, it bodes well for today. I'm quite looking forward to it. The car's very good. Temperature was running a little bit high in the car, but I think we've managed to cure that. Yeah, I can't wait to get started, really.
David, you've been doing it for 3 years now. It's your third year. How have you been finding the year?
Yeah, it's very good. It's very much part-time now, but no, we're enjoying it. It's a good bunch of lads, and the way it's run, really good.
So you're actually a really busy man, aren't you? You've been doing a lot of other things. Tell me more about what you do.
Yeah, we're actually team manager for Lee Wood with his British Touring Car Championship. So yeah, it's very much when we're not racing with the touring car, we come out with this. And we also do scrutineering for the national hot rods on the small oval. So.
Wow, so you don't get many weekends off then?
No, definitely not. This is our house for the summer, so that's it, every weekend.
This is the penultimate round, but next time you're out at Brands Hatch, you're actually doing that with Lee Woods, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. It's the last round next weekend for the touring car, so that's it. The following meeting, Lee is going to bring the pickup out for its once a year. He was hoping to be here this weekend, but didn't make it.
So are there going to be any team tactics, any nudging?
Oh no, never would be, would we? I'm manager though, that's the thing.
As the sun comes out, I'm here with Paul Jones, our leading rookie. Paul, how's your season gone so far? Obviously very well. It's your first season and you're leading the rookie championship.
Yeah, I mean it's been quite a difficult season for us, you know, because we're learning through the year and finding all our little bits and pieces and our mistakes and everything, but we're gradually getting there, and you know, we're trying to chase the good guys, but you know, it's hard work in our first year, and hopefully next year with a new engine we're going to kind of like hopefully be with the rest of the pack.
You used to do some oval racing. How are you finding Pembrey?
You know, it is totally different from oval racing. It's much faster, and you've got to be on the ball all the time. But, you know, it's an absolutely brilliant series to be in, and, you know, I wouldn't do anything else from pickups. So, you know, that's how it goes.
I'm here with Lee Rogers. And how did qualifying go yesterday?
I had a problem in qualifying yesterday. The car didn't feel too bad, and then we lost all the brakes. So a little bit excitable, especially around Pembrey with a big stop at the end of the straight here. So yeah, we didn't get into the second part of our qualifying, but we've come back, we found what's wrong, we've changed it, and all being well, we should have some brakes for the first race.
So what got you into this championship? And you've been in it for quite a few years, so why do you love it so much?
It's one of those championships where it is door-to-door racing, you know, it's very close. We got involved after watching the ASCARs around Rockingham. We went up there and followed them. They were okay, but the pickup stole the show up there, and Dean, my brother, who owns this as well, he's the one who got us going down the line to finding the truck and then getting us involved. And like I say, we did it for a couple of years, and we're still plugging away trying to stay in the championship. So
I'm here with Charlie Weaver, number 20. Before all racing starts, Charlie, I want to ask you a little bit about your past racing experience, because you've been doing it since you were 17 years old. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I started in motocross when I was 17 years old, and I went through the grades and got up to expert grade, and within a couple of years raced in the British Championship level, and even went across to race in America a couple of times. And then I had a bit of a bad accident when I was about 34 years old.
What adaptations have you had to do to the car?
Well, first off, I had to be able to get in and out the truck, and obviously a requirement from the MSA is that you've got to be able to get out the truck within 7 seconds, so you had to pass them tests. So then we put in a motorised hand-operated clutch system, we modified the pedals, put a hand-operated brake in, and sort of we started testing, and then within a year it sort of all came together and it started working.
What are your hopes for this weekend?
Well, my hopes are always to try to get in the top 3, but it doesn't seem to work out that way. But obviously we got a front row start in the first race, so I'll have to wait and see what happens.
Charlie qualified 9th in the relevant session, and that puts him on pole position. Well, actually outside front pole, because it's Tony Mumford who lines up on pole. Tony qualified in 10th place, and then it's a reverse grid, so the driver that gets the fastest time in qualifying goes to 10th place. They reverse the fastest 10, but you do get extra points for qualifying, an extra 20 points. That went to championship leader Steve Dance. We're on board with Charlie Weaver. Lights out, away we go. There's Tony Mumford getting away as they come down into Hatchett's hairpin for the first time. It's a very good orderly start, as we expect from the trucks, and from the fastest part of the circuit to the slowest. Hatchett's hairpin, now driving standards absolutely key to any first corner here, particularly with the reverse grid. Charlie having a few problems, as we can see. I think he's got back on track, but we're on board with Nick Grindrod. He's one of the main championship contenders. Remember, won the Motors TV100 at Rockingham. If you watched last lap earlier in the season, you might well recall the programme we had there, which was 100 miles of racing at Rockingham on the Super Speedway. Through into the lead goes Paul Tompkins, past Tony Mumford, into second place. Anthony Hawkins in white. Looks like there's going to be a change for third as well. Michael Smith in 93 goes through. Tony Mumford getting high out to drive a clatter as Charlie Weaver forces his way past Lee Rogers in truck number 69. Rogers demoted. We've got Paul Jones coming up as well in the light blue 82 truck. So that's the beauty of reverse grid racing. Some of the guys who have perhaps got their trucks a little bit more switched on will start to work their way through the top 10. So the truck's the only formula in the UK that races on oval and the big American style oval and circuit racing. It's a very good mixture, and that's why the drivers are in left-hand drive, the outside of the circuit here, as they go down into Hatches for the second time. The car on the outside is 22. Nick Grindrod second in the championship. Past Michael Smith. There was contact there between Phil White and Smith. We're looking at the front end of Phil White's car. Now, is he going to give Nick a little tap as well? That won't have been an intentional bang there from Phil White. He's not that kind of driver, but he does like to get as close as possible. You see how the camera angle from the rear of Nick Grindrod's 22 car shows us how close this racing is. Pembrey, a wonderful circuit for these trucks. They raced here earlier on in the season. In fact, had their opening 3 races at Pembrey. We've got 2 for you this weekend. It's a 25 race championship, and this is the view from one of the drivers we spoke to, Steve Dance, quadruple champion in pickup trucks. Won in 2011, 2010, 2007 and 2003. Well over 40 career wins now for Steve Dance in the 16 truck, as we look at Michael Smith coming under pressure from Dance down the inside into Hatchett. Very clear move there. Got on the brakes a little bit later, but made his move nice and early. Hatchett's a marvellous corner for these pickups because it's so tight, and a lot of these guys have got short oval racing experience, so they're well used to chucking a car into a very tight corner. Dave Longhurst in 23. Former hot rod world champion, as you heard in the interview, still very much involved in all sorts of motor racing as joint chair with his wife Carol of the National Hot Rod Promoters Association and team manager for Lee Wood in the British touring cars. Now, the top runners in the championship are also carrying ballast. You get 30 kilos of ballast for a win, up to a maximum of 70. 20 kilos for second place in a race, 10 kilos for third, and if you finish outside then you take 10 kilos off. Here they come then side by side here. Phil White in the denim car centre black truck down the inside of Anthony Hawkins. This is the view from Steve Dance. White's going to clatter his way through, and Dance is coming offline as well. 3-1 as he comes down into the hairpin. He thinks better of it. Phil White's got the position though, and Dance, look how hard they are onto the brakes into Hatches. That's why there are people watching there. Anthony Hawkins gets a little bit crossed up on the way out, but loses the Paul Jones is out, the Surrey-based scaffolder, rookie championship leader. That's going to be a big dent in his championship points. But back to Phil White in 63, not leading the race, but he's ahead at the moment of Steve Dance. This is the man second in the championship we're on board with, Nick Grindrod. He's also second in the race. Paul Tompkins in number 12 had a good run here, and Tompkins leaves the door open and Nick Grindrod's through. Nick Grindrod goes through the 22 truck, hasn't had a race win since Rockingham round 16, but he wants to put that right this weekend as we look back at the A4 metal car of Paul Tompkins. Both of these guys cut their teeth oval racing. Nick Grindrod went into Westfield sports car racing after serving an apprenticeship in Grand Prix Midgets, where he was one of the top drivers. Didn't win the overall championship, but won many individual titles, and he certainly proved his mettle as a circuit racer, as we said, in the Westfields, in Legends cars, as well as now in the pickup truck racing championship. Rockingham champion as well, Nick Grindrod, going back over the years, 2005 and 2006 champion. He's got ahead of Paul Tompkins, who is, compared to Nick, I've got to say, a relative newcomer, but proving himself very, very quickly, Paul Tompkins. Won at Rockingham last year. And there's problems for David O'Regan, the youngest driver in the field, the 21-year-old from County Cork. Looks like an engine problem. Back we go, Anthony Hawkins. There is 93, Michael Smith. Michael actually one of the younger drivers in the championship. 37 years old. The average age is 45 in the championship, and I think the drivers will probably thank me for pointing out that statistic. But Michael putting pressure at the moment on Anthony Hawkins. Lee Rogers goes past Tony Mumford, 72 trying to go through as well. That's a newcomer to the championship this year, James Goldstraw. And there goes Steve Dance past Phil White, a very emphatic move as they go down into the hairpin. You can see it was a late move out. Pulled over, I think he sold White a dummy. Cracking stuff here from the pickups at Pembrey. Welcome back to Pembrey. It is Nick Grindrod who leads. Now up into second place has gone Steve Dance in 16. Then it's Paul Tompkins third. Phil White in 63 about to challenge for that. Comes offline, looks down the inside. He's too far back as they go into Hatchett's, the hairpin. Then into Spitfires, which is a right-hander here, where Dave Longhurst goes through past 98, Anthony Hawkins. Then it's two left corners, DeBenny, which is where they are now, through turn 4 as well, which is a left-hander. And then the right-hander at the S's is the next one. You'll see when the cars switch to the right, they go through there. Now Phil White dropping back into the clutches of Dave Longhurst in 23. So the Sussex-based driver looking at the Middlesex man at the moment. Both of these guys have World Championship pedigree in short oval racing. Phil White, the only driver to have won the National Hot Rod and National Super Rod Championship. In fact, he did it on the same weekend several years ago, and he's this year's Rockingham Championship winner. 60 years of age now, Phil White. And like Pete Stevens, who's sadly not racing with us this weekend, proof that you don't need to be a youngster to do well. Dave Longhurst looking up the inside. He's got a slightly better run than we saw Steve Dance do earlier on. Made the move early. That's the sort of thing you expect from Dave Longhurst. Thinks about it well in advance. Look how tight that Phil White goes. And you can see the little mark on the side of Phil's car, which the tyre mark on the number, which we call a Catherine wheel. It just shows how close these cars are getting. Michael Smith down behind them as they go through DeBenny. That's the crossover point from the outer paddock into the inner paddock. Here's Steve Dance running in second place. And there's the man he's chasing up front, Nick Grindrod. The car's coming down into the Brooklands hairpin. Dave Longhurst in 23, the West Park Contractors car. 0 kg in terms of ballast, so he's been out of the podium positions the last few races. There is Charlie Weaver in 20, still running well. So Longhurst and Phil White followed by Michael Smith in 93. Race wins so far this year. Nick Grindrod with 8, Steve Dance 6. Cole Boardley, who's not with us this weekend, has had 3 wins. He was well up in the championship. And here comes Michael Smith looking at the inside of Phil White. There's smoke coming out of the back of the Denham Car Centre truck, and through goes Michael Smith in 93. The A1 Performance Products machine goes through, makes up a place. So Michael Smith then, that does seem to be the most popular place to pass here at Pembrey for the trucks. There are plenty of other options as well. Of course, we saw Nick Grindrod take the lead on a different part of the circuit. And Michael Smith's got a problem. Off goes the 93 truck, half spin, glances into the tyres, spins around. That'll bring out the yellow flags. And will take the pressure off Nick Grindrod. Not that I think there's any on him at the moment. So the 22 truck coming out of the last corner, Honda, and then down the straight. There is Steve Dance second. Now, interesting to see that Paul Tompkins is putting him under pressure. Paul Tompkins got a second in the final here in the opening round of the season. And this is his second year. The rest of the guys have got so much experience in pickups. Paul Tompkins, for my money, has really marked himself out as a driver that could well be a future champion in pickups. And that is a very difficult thing to do, because this is one of the few formulas in the UK where drivers really do stick with it. You tend not to get that many drivers moving on. Here comes Steve Dance, still there in 16, as we said, quadruple champion. Another driver that raced on the short oval, started off in the 3-litre Capri Super Rod formula back in the tail end of the 1970s, and he's got big family support. He's got a very loyal team that works so hard on it. Paul Tompkins is taking the battle back to him at the moment. So Tompkins closing in, and he's going to put Dance under pressure. We've not seen this kind of thing before. Once you get Grindrod and Dance out front, it's very rare that anybody can challenge them. But at the moment, Nick Grindrod is away and down the road, and it looks like Tompkins is going to have a go down into. Oh well, he's a little bit far back. Camera angles just slightly flattering to deceive there as we go back on board with Steve Dance. A little bit of a wobble on the car there, perhaps a little bit tail happy. Might not be overly enthusiastic about the setup on the truck at this stage, but he's been mightily consistent over the course of the season. So too has Paul Tompkins, as off goes Charlie Weaver. Weaver Brothers Roofing back truck is out of harm's way. There is Lee Rogers, who's running well, started 10th, and he's up into 6th position, so it's been a good run for the Exeter driver. This pretty much his home track, although it's still a long drive round as Paul Tompkins continues to put the pressure on. Tompkins has not had a non-finish so far this year. Steve Dance has had one. Let's hope that I don't put the curse of the commentator on Paul Tompkins in car number 12. There is Nick Grindrod, yellow and red, going through, race leader, looking for win number 9 of the championship year. Steve Dance in 16 is still in second place. Paul Tompkins, car number 12, former world banger champion. Totally different discipline for him, and here he comes down the inside. Side by side with Steve Dance, who will have seen him. Now Dance could chop across, but I think he's going to be... Yeah, look at that, hard on the brakes, and he's through. Paul Tompkins goes through into second place. That is a key manoeuvre for Paul Tompkins. Look at the tail end, he gets it out, he's working hard. Nick Grindrod's got a huge lead at the moment over the pair of them, but Paul Tompkins has passed the quadruple champion, and that's going to be a big psychological boost for Tompkins going forward in this racing, because now he knows that he can outrace Steve Dance on his day. This has surely got to be Paul Tompkins' best circuit. Won at Rockingham on the ovals last year, so that marks him out as a driver now who is well good on the ovals and good too here on the circuits. This is all a new discipline for him, road racing of course, from last year, his debut season. And Dance dropping back, may well have a problem with the truck. And Paul Tompkins, for my money, is starting to close in on Nick Grindrod. Grindrod's got the fastest lap, that was back on lap 3, 63.47 seconds, 82.58 miles per hour here around Pembrey. So Grindrod is out front, Paul Tompkins second, Steve Dance third, Dave Longhurst is fourth. Then it's Anthony Hawkins. We've had quite a few trucks go into retirement, and this reverse grid race has given us some superb action. We've got a stationary yellow flag there as they came out of hatchets, and I think that's Phil White who's off in 63, but Paul Tompkins having no problems at all. There is Tompkins getting away at the moment from Steve Dance. They head down toward, there is Phil White's truck, 63. So disappointment for Phil, who runs very strongly in the championship. I think it's actually Phil's first retirement of the year. Such has been excellent preparation on the Denham Car Centre machine. But here is Nick Grindrod, the 22 truck with the Paul Exxon Duratec engine, the man from Selly Oak, who is having a go now at trying to equal Gavin Seeger's career wins record. Gavin Seeger, who was a former champion, and Nick's going to have to win every race between now and the end of the season at Brands Hatch to equal Gavin Seeger's record. That is a very tall order in pickup truck racing. Steve Dance closing up on Paul Tompkins again. Tompkins will no doubt be having a look at his mirrors. You can see the 12 truck getting a little bit tail happy, but he's controlling it well. Through they go, out of the S's and then down towards the Brooklands hairpin and towards Honda for the last time. But here is Nick Grindrod, who is going to take win number 9 in terms of race wins, the most successful driver in the championship so far, Nick Grindrod in 22. He's had 2 retirements this year, one at Thruxton, one at Snetterton, and he takes the checkered flag. Grindrod wins it. Paul Tompkins second again here at Pembrey. Steve Dance is third. Confirmation of that, Dave Longhurst was 4th ahead of Anthony Hawkins. Then Lee Rogers, he made up places from his grid start. Mike Smith 7th, James Goldstraw in 8th place. A few retirements who will now be busy down in the paddock getting ready for race 2. Fastest lap does indeed go to race winner Nick Grindrod.
Nick started on the 4th row, came through to win it. How does it feel?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It wasn't as easy as it looked. Managed just to get through them, pick them off one at a time, and 20 laps was a long way around Pembrey. Managed just to keep there and keep a gap once we got a gap.
And how different is it to be driving? Look, we saw you at Rockingham last time on our series on the oval. How different is it to be driving this track?
It's a completely different discipline. The trucks are almost identical bar setup, exactly the same. So it's just down to the driver's mindset. Rockingham's a lot more strategic, shall we say. You've got to think about the race, and you can do it like that. Where most people who know circuit racing, you can make a little bit up on braking. You're a bit quicker here than somebody else, but you lose out over there. So it's a bit of swapping backwards and forwards. But yeah, one chalk and cheese, shall we say.
And 2nd place goes to Paul Tompkins. Paul, it's only your 2nd year doing this class, and you've now moved up 3rd into the points. How was that race?
Well, obviously it was good because we got a 2nd, but 1st would have been better. So next race, we go for 1st.
And how close were you to chasing down Nick there? You looked really quick at the end of the race.
He'd already got away from me. I did try to catch him, but there wasn't no catching him. He was just a little bit too far away from us.
And what are you hoping for the rest of the day?
To keep on the track, finish the race, but up in the podiums, so we can claw them top 2 back in a little bit.
Finishing in 3rd place is Steve Dance. Steve, good start to the race. Started to go off at the end though.
Yeah, I mean, mid-race the car was very, very good, and I thought I was going to be able to catch Nick, but for some reason the car went really bad, and I suffered with a lot of understeer. And the longer the race went, the worse it got. But hey ho, we'll alter the car a little bit and hopefully get better for next time.
So you are going to make a few setup changes for the next race?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I mean, although there was a lot of oil on the circuit, then I don't know. Maybe that's why there was a lot of gearbox failures, I think, and put the oil on the track. But yeah, we will alter the car for the next race, definitely.
I'm back with Lee Rogers after the 1st race. Lee started quite near the back, came through to 6th. You told us earlier you had a few problems with your brakes. Did that all get sorted out?
Yeah, we had the first 2 or 3 laps. It was a little touch and go until the brakes bedded themselves in. Then it seemed to work all right. Had a little bit of a problem with Paul Jones. He came up the inside of me, and then he lost his steering column, I think, and took us both off the track, which then put us right to the back again. Had a bit of a lonely race then. We picked off a few as we come through. A few other people dropped by the wayside, and we finished okay. The car was going relatively well, really.
We're on board then and ready for the 2nd race, round 23 of the Pickup Truck Racing Championship. Anthony Hawkins on pole with Michael Smith alongside, then Paul Tompkins and Dave Longhurst on row 2. Nick Grindrod and Paul Jones the 3rd row. They're followed by Lee Rogers and Tony Mumford. Then it's James Goldstraw and Charlie Weaver. David O'Regan and Phil White on row 6. Steve Dance at the back of the field. A number of drivers having changed components on the cars. And if you break a seal, you go to the back of the field. We're getting ready to go. Lights out for the rolling start for the pickup trucks and down into Hatchett's hairpin. There is Charlie Weaver in 20 down towards the back of the field. As we said, a lot of repairs going on, but it looks like Anthony Hawkins got the lead as they went round. There is Phil White round the outside. Steve Dance chasing him in truck number 16. The gap in the championship between Nick Grindrod and Steve Dance now down to 22 points because, there's a spin there. Tony Mumford out in truck number 7. A couple of other guys involved as well. We're on board with Michael Smith. Paul Tompkins in front of us, but there's the race leader. Anthony Hawkins gets it all, gets a big tank slapper on there in the 98 machine. Very much an oval racing driver, Anthony. He wanted to focus on running on the ovals at Rockingham with the pickups, but he's really got stuck into circuit racing over the last few years. And here's Nick Grindrod, fantastic onboard camera angle showing the double champion at work aboard the 22 truck. Michael Smith ahead of him in 93. Paul Tompkins, though, having a good go, has come through very well indeed. That reliability on the 12 truck certainly standing him in very good stead, as well as some fast drives. And Grindrod goes for third place round the outside at the hairpin. This is a very typical oval move, but Michael Smith is wily to that, and Dave Longhurst goes through. So Grindrod loses a place there. Similar colour scheme, red and yellow in front of him. So Dave Longhurst goes through, makes up a position. I don't think Nick fully thought that one out. If he'd kept his eyes on his mirrors, then perhaps he'd have known that Longhurst was going to come through. But Nick Grindrod knows that there's time here to do it. It's a 20-lap race here around Pembrey, as Anthony Hawkins still has the lead. Second place, Paul Tompkins, man from Tadley in Hampshire, 44 years of age. There is Michael Smith in 93, the 37-year-old from Hartlepool. So drivers from all over the UK, and indeed, of course, we've got the 21-year-old from Ireland, David O'Regan. David, who's won a race this year. Michael Smith look at the inside line there on Paul Tompkins. Now remember, Tompkins second in the opening race. Anthony Hawkins hanging on to this one, and Anthony always in with a shout of a podium if he is in the mix. He's had a couple of podiums so far this year. Dave Longhurst this time trying the outside line, doing what Grindrod did last time, but goes out wide, and Nick's got the position back. Longhurst gets bundled onto the grass, and now Nick Grindrod decides the inside line's better. Side by side with Michael Smith. Now coming through to Benny, can't quite do it that way. He'll switch back to the inside line. You can see the 70 graphic indicating he's got maximum ballast on board, and through to Benny, he goes through, grabs the inside line. Well, Nick thought that one out. The sun getting lower in the sky as the day moves on here at Pembrey, and Nick Grindrod moves on in 22. A little bit of a moment off onto the grass there. We've got a challenge for the lead. Paul Tompkins has gone through into the lead just ahead of us. There he is, the black truck with the green trim goes through. Anthony Hawkins in white is second. Nick Grindrod third, then Michael Smith. Dave Longhurst back on track. The red and yellow truck is there as well. And then a bit of a gap back. Now is that Lee Rogers down behind them? He's having a much better meeting here this weekend. Always seems to go well at Pembrey, does Lee? Down the main straight past the start-finish line. Unusual that both racetracks in Wales you can't see as a spectator the start-finish line. Anglesey hasn't got any spectator facilities opposite the start-finish line, and neither has Pembrey, as Longhurst goes through, this time on the inside of Michael Smith rather than the inside. On board we go with Smithy. Seeds the place down to fifth. Dave Longhurst chops his way through. And now we'll start to battle on Nick Grindrod, who goes past 98, Anthony Hawkins. And here comes Dave Longhurst. Look at the tail out of the 23 truck. Nearly goes into Anthony Hawkins, who left enough room. These guys really do know how to race against each other. And Dave Longhurst, the tall man from Worthing in Sussex, showing that he's still got all the skill that took him to those short oval championships those years back. It's still Paul Tompkins out front. This is the view from Dave Longhurst now into third place. So it's Paul Tompkins, black and green, from the yellow and red of Nick Grindrod. Red and yellow, I suppose we could say, for 23, Dave Longhurst. That's a shortened version of his famous oval racing number, 230. Down the main straight they go. Then it's Michael Smith chasing Paul Tompkins, Anthony Hawkins, who's still in fourth place. So down into Hatchets. I've got to say, one of my favourite pickup corners. It's actually part of a redundant short oval. He used to race on the tri-oval here. I'm pretty sure Nick Grindrod won in midget racing on the short oval. Here we come then. There is Nick in 22 chasing. 23, Dave Longhurst is still there in third. This is the view from Steve Dance. He's a little bit further back. It's Phil White in front of him, about to have a go at 69, Lee Rogers, but Rog, as ever, running well in the SHP Engineering livery car. Paul Tompkins is off through the dirt. Oh, disappointment for Winkle, who goes off the track. He gets it back on, and past goes Steve Dance. Phil White going through as well in 63. Got to try and clear the windows now. Tompkins, a quick recovery down behind Lee Rogers. So we're watching the battle between 63 Phil White and 16 Steve Dance, who's losing points crucially on this man who now leads the race again. 22 Nick Grindrod, but coming under pressure from Dave Longhurst in 23. Down into Hatchets. Longhurst looks up the inside. Grindrod, I think, took a slightly more generous line, which perhaps indicates he doesn't feel too threatened at the moment. This is what Longhurst is contending with. He's got the sun, of course, in his eyes, and the 22 truck right ahead of him. Two sequential numbers. You could be forgiven thinking that they're both red and yellow, that they are teammates, but they're not teammates. Both of them running under their own steam. As we said, Grindrod, who comes from Birmingham, tended amongst others, by his dad, Carl Grindrod, himself a former oval racer. And Nick's brother Richard used to race pickups and legends. He's off doing drifting championships and the like now, and very successfully too. So Longhurst goes through in second. Anthony Hawkins looking good for third at the moment in 98. There he is. And from Sutton Coldfield, so another Midlander. Then it's Michael Smith. Michael running the David O'Regan truck this year. David having decided that it's probably a better idea to worry about the travelling rather than worry about the preparation of the truck. Seems to be standing him in good stead because he's got a good point score. He's actually ahead of Michael Smith in the point standings at the moment as we go back on board with Steve Dance trying to deal with 63 Phil White. Phil's first retirement of the year in race number 1, the reigning champion at Rockingham, as we mentioned. Looked very much at home on the oval this year. Took a couple of podiums, a race win at Rockingham. And Steve Dance is the man that's putting pressure on him at the moment. Both of these guys, top oval men in the day. Lee Rogers in 69, a former West Country hot rod champion. And he's chasing Paul Tompkins. This is a good indicator of performance for Lee Rogers. Bear in mind that Tompkins has had a very good points score here as we go on board with Charlie Weaver. And it looks like Charlie's maybe got the kettle on here, and I think he's going to go into retirement. Oh, that's a shame for Charlie Weaver. A good spirited effort from him, but he is out of the race as we go side by side. Anthony Hawkins has now been passed by 93. Michael Smith goes through. Hard on the brakes, not as hard as some of the drivers do. We're not seeing the brakes, but look at Hawkins. Very quick exit, gets back up the inside line. That's going to continue to be an inside line as they go around Spitfires down towards DeBenny, and then of course here is DeBenny the next corner, which if you can hang on you can grab an inside line. But Hawkins very quick out of the hairpin, but by that time he'd lost the advantage to this man, Michael Smith. Smith up into third place here. Dave Longhurst, the man he's chasing there in 23. So Dave with 0 kilograms of ballast on the truck. Nick Grindrod with the full 70, past Charlie Weaver's machine. And this is the view from Steve Dance trying to get past at the moment. Fluid coming up from Phil White. That's going to hamper Steve Dance because it all seems to be going on the driver's side of the windshield. This is the battle that we were looking at on board. Now, in terms of championship points at the moment, Nick Grindrod 22 points adrift of Steve Dance. So Dance has got to make up a few places. It's 5 points per place here. You do get points as well for qualifying. And after this weekend, we've got 2 more races. They are Brands Hatch, and we'll be covering them on Last Lap for Motors TV. So it looks like the championship's going to go to the wire, but neither this man, Nick Grindrod, or the man that we were looking at, Steve Dance, can afford to have a retirement. Nick's had 2 so far this year. Steve Dance has had the 1, so the championship, if they both finish all the other races, is going to come down to consistency as much as anything else. Grindrod looking very comfortable here. There he goes, the 22 machine pulling clear at the moment of Dave Longhurst, so he's seen off the challenge of Longhurst in second position. This is the view in the office of the 22 truck. Viking Spares, the company that support Nick, and through he goes. V-tune on the back as well. Dave Longhurst still trying to hunt him down. This has been a good run from Dave Longhurst so far. He hasn't done all the season, Dave, but when he does, he's actually never finished outside of the top 6 in all the races that he's finished. He's had a couple of DNFs, but he's always up the sharp end. So Longhurst still trying to close down on Grindrod, who's getting away. Dave Longhurst with the fastest lap of the race on lap 7, 64.093. Here is Steve Dance still trying to cut his way through the field and negate any points advantage that Nick Grindrod's got. You can see he's carrying 70 kilos of ballast as well. Anthony Hawkins in 98 still running well, and that's Phil White up behind him in 63, who's pulled out a little bit of a gap now over Steve Dance, 3 or 4 lengths to the good. Waved yellow flags there because we've got a truck off on the outside of the circuit, and Steve Dance, beg your pardon, Phil White looking down the inside line, and he's going to go through side by side with Anthony Hawkins. Here they come then, it was out of Honda, and he's got the inside line surely as they come down into Hatchett's hairpin. Phil White moves up into fourth position behind Michael Smith. So that was the battle for fourth. Hawkins again, you can see, quick out of the hairpin. Puts the metal down. Is he going to be able to get Phil White back? Join us after the break to find out. Welcome back to Pembrey. We're looking at the battle for fifth position. Steve Dance, the championship leader, tries to go through. Hawkins goes wide and Steve Dance in the Total Tyres car is going side by side with him. Surely he's going to have the advantage into the next corner. Hawkins isn't giving up. He fights back. But Steve Dance knows he's got the line through into the next corner. Takes position. Hawkins was still fighting it, but I think has realised now that perhaps he's got to defend from the car coming up behind him as well, which is Paul Tompkins. So Tompkins recovering after a moment off earlier on. It was second in race one for him. He's going to be further back here. Steve Dance then will be very pleased to have made up a position. He's got to try and deal with Phil White. Paul Tompkins late lunge down into the corner. A good clean manoeuvre from him. I think he's got past Anthony Hawkins now as well. So Tompkins has made progress. Good driving from the number 12 car again here at Pembrey. For my money, perhaps man of the meeting. Although I think Nick Grindrod may well dispute that on his way perhaps to a second win. But Paul Tompkins certainly, as a driver with less road racing, less pickup truck racing experience, really showing some good form here and giving notice of intent for future seasons. There is Steve Dance, who's ahead of him. And Steve, well, I think for next season, be thinking, hang on, Tompkins is really getting on the case of this pickup truck racing. It's only his second year. And normally for a driver to come on that quickly, you don't tend to see it. You normally have to stick with the formula a mite longer than that to start getting some success. But Steve Dance knows all about that. 4 championships to his credit so far. There is Dave Longhurst in 23, still giving chase. So Longhurst in second position. Nick Grindrod away down the road. Longhurst fastest man on track, as we said before the break. And you can see how much work he's got to do to try and reel in Nick Grindrod. Of course, one of the things you can do, you heard Nick saying about setup in this championship, you can set the truck up to maybe work better in the earlier stages, maybe in the later, or go for an even balance. And Nick here seems to have the balance exactly right, whatever he's doing. There's Lee Rogers running well, 69, looks like he's going to be on for another healthy point score at the moment. And the young Irishman, David O'Regan, chasing him down. David with just 10 kilos of ballast on the truck, still chasing Rogers at the moment. So Rogers' team ever enthusiastic. He's had so many problems this year, but the team behind him, you heard him mention his brother Dean Rogers. Let's hope that Dean's watching and not tweeting at the moment, because he does spend a lot of time tweeting. And Lee's wife Annie will be watching, and their son Ayrton, who of course will be the next generation pickup truck racer for sure. As we go back to Nick Grindrod in 22, still out front and leading this one well. It looks very cool. He'll afford himself maybe a look in the mirrors very shortly, but he really does look at one with the 22 machine, and he's gunning for a third championship at the moment. He is potentially going to go away with the championship lead here, because he was 22 points clear of Steve Dance. So when we come back to them, we'll go back to the mathematics of it, as David O'Regan continues to put pressure on the auto dump machine in front of us. Lee Rogers getting all defensive, and O'Regan's going to look to the outside line. Nothing doing on the inside. Lee's got a very good defensive line and hangs on to it. O'Regan looks like he's got the speed now, makes the move on the outside line. So side by side with the 69 truck, not quite there yet as they come into Honda, and is he going to be able to do it round the outside? Side by side, this is very brave stuff from O'Regan. He's still side by side as they come through Honda curve, down onto the main straight. Very rare that you see someone go round the outside line, and now he's got to try and get across before they get into the hairpin. He's got the grunt, and he's through. That was surely pass of the day from David O'Regan, outside line at Honda. And Lee Rogers probably thought, well, he ain't going to do it, but he did. Cracking piece of overtaking. Good driving from both men there as we go back to the man second in the race, Dave Longhurst, having a bit of a lonely time of it. 4 or 5 seconds down the road from Nick Grindrod at the moment, but equally some way clear of the third place truck of Michael Smith. There is Paul Tompkins still trying to chase down Steve Dance in the 16 machine. So at the moment, Grindrod, just trying to work out the points here. I think Grindrod may well be a couple of points clear. So Steve Dance is ahead of Tompkins, but ahead of him he's got, oh, it looks like Phil White's gone now, doesn't it? So in fact Steve Dance's championship lead is going to be intact because we've lost Phil White in 63 out of the equation. And that means, to my money, that Steve Dance is fourth. So that's going to be 15 points that he's going to lose in this race out of the 22. He'll carry a 7-point lead through at the moment to Brands Hatch unless Paul Tompkins gets past him. So Nick Grindrod is going to have to chase hard at Brands Hatch in the last round of the season championship points wise. It's 200 points for a win, 195 for second, and all the way down as we look at Michael Smith still running in third place at the moment. The A1 Performance Centre truck running well in third. There is Steve Dance. He's under pressure from Paul Tompkins. I'll tell you what, that black truck could well become his nemesis as we go back to Nick Grindrod, still running well in 22. Look at the lead that he's got. There is Dave Longhurst in second place. Third place is Michael Smith. Paul Tompkins trying to have a go at Steve Dance, but he can't quite get through. Out of Honda corner. Down across the line they go again. Smith still there in third place. There is Steve Dance in fourth. It looks like Tompkins has lost a little bit of momentum after that attack there. 2 or 3 lengths down. Very tight into Hatchett's hairpin, but the race leader Nick Grindrod, absolutely nothing to worry about here at all for the man from Selly Oak, who is doing absolutely all he can. You don't get extra points for fastest laps here. It's all about points for qualifying. It's about points for winning races and beating your competitors. And at the moment, he's a good few points clear. 15 points clear in this race of Steve Dance as he goes on to the last mile and a half here at Pembrey. It's going to be a 7-point lead between Steve Dance and this man, Nick Grindrod, who's going to go away second on the championship, unless anything dramatic happens on this last lap. Let's not count our chickens before they're hatched. But Grindrod with maximum ballast, this is real notice of intent for him. Doesn't matter how much success ballast you stick on the 22 truck, he's still out there and still capable of winning and looking for win number 10. So this is going to put him into double figures for wins for this year. Here he comes into the closing stages of the lap. Grindrod with 2 wins. He won one of the televised races that we did at Rockingham. So this is going to be his 3rd win in front of the cameras this year. He won the Motors TV 100 at Rockingham on the Oval. He's proved that he can road race as well. If there's any Americans watching and want a decent driver to go out and race in racing across the pond, then you could do a heck of a lot worse than looking at the guys in this one. And Dance goes past Michael Smith. It's another 5 points clear for Dance. That is so important for the championship. But Nick Grindrod takes the win. Grindrod wins it. Dance is up to 3rd. And that means that the championship lead going into Brands Hatch is extended by 5 points. Dance really working hard right the way to the flag. Well, that's exactly what you need to do. But it's Grindrod that wins from Longhurst. Dance in 3rd from Michael Smith. Paul Tompkins 5th. Then Anthony Hawkins and David O'Regan, Lee Rogers 8th, and Paul Jones in 9th place. Fastest lap to the 2nd place driver, Dave Longhurst. Let's go down to the paddock for a Fern conversation.
I'm here with Nick Grindrod, another race win. Are you happy?
Yeah, I've got a smile. Yeah, definitely got a good smile on my face. So yeah, almost maximum points for this weekend. So all looking good.
You're actually starting on row 3 in that race. How did you get into the lead?
By a bit of a bonus starting on row 3. A lot of people had problems, so we moved up the grid, and it took a good few laps. We was fairly quick up until a point, and then they're coming together with the 2 in front, and then one went off, out-braked himself, and we sort of not got gifted the lead, but we was in the right place at the right time, and then we just seemed to pull away. I think the cars that were behind were battling, and we had nobody to battle, so we could keep going as fast as we could.
Brilliant. Well, I wish you all the luck in the world for Brands Hatch.
Thank you very much.
I'm just here with David Longhurst. Wow, what a great 2nd place. What a good day.
Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it today. 4th in the first one and 2nd in the trophy, so yeah, well pleased with that.
And taking it out to Brands Hatch, it's good points to take through to the championship.
Yeah, that's right. Car's only one piece, so yeah, Brands Hatch, here we come.
Not much to pack up today, no damage on the car or anything like that.
No, we've done well, fingers crossed, so we've had a good meeting and so it's been really good all round. So that's it, we're nearly all packed up now and 6 hours home.
Steve Dance just came third. Are you happy with your weekend?
I suppose I am really, considering the troubles we've had. We've had gearbox troubles in both races, so lucky to finish that one. I was nursing the gearbox for the last half of the race, so yeah, pleased to come out here with third actually, very pleased.
And looking at the championship, taking it now to the last round at Brands Hatch, how's it looking?
Oh, I pretty much knew it was going to be, you know, I knew it was always going to be tight. Nick's very good here. Hopefully we'll be a bit better at Brands, but you know, what'll be.
Is it a circuit that you like at Brands Hatch?
Very much so, yeah. And the car really worked well there earlier in the year, so quite looking forward to going back there.
Fantastic. Well, we wish you well for Brands Hatch.
Thank you very much.
Just 12 points between the championship leader, Steve Dance, and Nick Grindrod as they go to Brands Hatch. That's 3 race places. So it means that if Steve finishes second to Grindrod in both races, he can retain the championship. Still lots of other issues up for grabs, including the rookie championship. Paul Tompkins gunning for third ahead of Phil White. We'll be at Brands Hatch, so make sure you join us here on Motors TV for the conclusion of the pickup trucks. That's it for today's programme. Next time on Last Lap, we stay at Pembrey for the penultimate round of the bigger trucks, the British Truck Racing Association Championship, their penultimate event of the 2012 season. Monster Trucks! Join us next time here on Last Lap.